I'm Jodie Rizzo-O'Brien, part of the AWI Extension South Australia team. In this case study, we're going to hear from Brett Nietschke from Koonunga Farm Trust in the Barossa Valley on their eID implementation experiences. This case study was recorded in September 2025 at the eID workshop for profitability and productivity at Kapunda.
Producers that are going to share their experiences with eID and their journeys. And our first is Brett Nietschke.
Jodie has asked me to give a bit of a, just an outline of my eID journey as a producer. I'm small scale, I've started sort of more recently, and hopefully it's going to complement Georgie's talk, who's going to be following next, who's been at it for a while and more of a large scale producer. I'm from Koonunga, so those who are not aware, Koonunga's halfway in between here and Uriupta, about 15 k's to the north, and we've been farming there on the family property for a while now. Okay, just a bit of background. 460 mil annual average rainfall. Obviously, hasn't been that in the last few years. Probably in the last 10 years, it's more sort of been about 430. But as we all know, in the last few years, it's been a bit less than that. Mainly focused on cropping, but 25% of our property is dedicated to pasture, and we've got also annual pastures. We've got red brown earth, so it's a sort of a clover base, but we also go ahead and graze our barley crops and often our wheat crops for our cereals, should I say. Also a big fan of containment. Containment's a part of our operation where we'll lock up our ewes, probably usually in April, sometimes in March, right and through to the point of lambing, which is sort of June, July. They'll be locked up in like a little sacrifice paddock. We also have our hoggets locked up, also in a dedicated containment lot, sort of often until July this year. Last year was till August. We've got a self-replacing merino flock, and that's down to only about 300 ewes now. 3 or 4 years ago that was at 400, but obviously that's dropped due to the seasons. Okay, my eID journey. I guess it's been sort of slow and steady, certainly slow out of the blocks. I purchased tags firstly in 2022 and put them in the lambs, and have done that in 23, 24 and also now 25. But so it's ended up being this year where the 22 and 23 drop they've moved into the ewe mob, but it's also meant that 65% of the ewe mob has had tags, and the remainder have had the old sort of the normal sort of plastic clip tags. So a bit betwixt and between. So this year I went ahead and put all the ewes in the mob, popped an electronic tag in, and so that's probably that's been a bit of a change for me rather than just slow and steady. So it's also probably forced me to go ahead and use the eID equipment over the whole mob, particularly the sticker reader in relation to scanning, and I'll come to that shortly. The gear I've bought is True Test gear, the sticker reader, the XRS2, and the indicator. And I notice Tristan's here somewhere, so I'm sure you better fill you in about that. And also at the same time, bought a combi clamp. So this was back in 22. The PIRSA had a grant, I think it was a red meat sort of rebate grant that gave you 50% off some of this equipment. Okay, as part of my eID journey, you might say, I've been part of a Barossa Improved Grazing Group eID producer group. For those of you who don't know about Barossa Improved Grazing Group, we're a grower group that started back in 2012, got a focus on communicating, delivering projects in the pasture, livestock, water space. And one of those projects that Deb Scammell from Talking Livestock ran for us was an eID producer group. which started last year. George was part of that group. Also, Leah and Martha are also sitting on the table over there. They're part of that group. Like-minded producers want to learn about eID, how to utilise the information and sort of best practice. So part of that producer group, we had to develop a breeding objective, which included including getting a DNA test done on your flock profile DNA test. So some of you out there have done a profile test before? No? Anyway, so what happened was back in all our producers in our group, we got, I think it was it Neurogen, Georgie? Is that Neurogen? Yep. So they came on property and took a sample out of 20 ewe lambs out of sort of most properties, and then that came back and with some information related to particular traits. And so that information, I'll just run you through what it came back for our merino mob, but it just gives you a bit of an estimate of genetic merit for each of some key traits, and then armed with that information can hopefully help you can utilise then going forward in terms of ram selection. Okay, so these are my flock profile results. You'll see here they're all set up in like these information is set up as I guess a band graph with key traits, post-weaning weight, yearling weight, so they're related to growth, eye muscle depth, and yearling depth over here on the fat depth on the other side. So I guess I've put these up because these are the traits that I've probably focused on. Growth, particularly muscle and also fat in the last few years when I've come to buying rams. And so the format of these graphs is you'll see here there's a flock average, like in this case post-weaning weight. This is the industry flock average, and so it gives you an idea where you sit in terms of how you're going in terms of your selection, I guess. So here, the green bar, so higher the better. Green bar, I've sort of done okay in terms of, I guess it reaffirms that in terms of selecting for growth, I've done okay. But muscle depth and fat depth, where I haven't focused on as much as that, but there's something I certainly need to do in the future when it's basically below average. Obviously you want to be a bit better than average. You're not going to go anywhere if you're below average, let alone average. So that's something that I can focus on as part of my breeding objective sort of going forward. Okay, how am I using eID data? I guess there's two ways. Weighing lambs and also putting some scanning data on a reader, which I've done for the first time this year. So you'll see the picture on the right there, that was pre-eID. So I was always keen to go ahead and with my ewe lambs, what was happening particularly end of summer after they come off their stubbles into autumn, what was happening with their weights, so they weren't really going backwards. So what I used to do is just a dozen ewe lambs, just put a tag on them, and every 6 weeks they might have been in the yards or near the yards, I'd go ahead and weigh them. Obviously a bit of mucking around trying to go ahead and weigh each individual lamb and do it accurately, and to see what was happening generally in the mob, whether they were continuing with their weight going over summer or going backwards. But in the last few years, because I have had tags in, I've been able to just weigh the ewe lambs and to see what was happening over summer into autumn to see again if they're checking more accurately whether they're going backwards or what was happening. But the thing about it, this is where I'm lacking at the moment, I'm not using that individual data that the eID tags are providing. All I've been doing is using that information to see as a mob whether they were going backwards or forwards or what their average weight gain was. And so sort of defeats the purpose of eID, because obviously these tags can give you information on an individual basis rather than a flock basis. So this is what I probably want to do going forward, how do I utilise that information for maybe hogget classing, or those used to identify the ewe lambs or the ewe hoggets that can continue, that one have reasonable growth, but also probably at the same time, something that I haven't been doing is conditioning, scoring those individual ewe hoggets. So it'd be nice to have hoggets that have good growth plus good fat cover that can go into your main mob. That's the ewe lambs. With the weather lambs, just for the first time this year, so the 2024 drop, I've gone ahead and had them in the feedlot, put them in the feedlot. 4 weeks later, or weighed them when they went into the feedlot. 4 weeks later, weighed them again. I was able to then go ahead and take out 10% of those weather lambs. Either they were small or they weren't growing quick enough. Out of the mob, they were taken to Dublin to be sold, and then the others stayed in the feedlot. So it gives you an opportunity to take out those poor stragglers rather than keep on holding them in the feedlot. Okay, the other way I've been using eID, and I've just set this up, acknowledgement here to Michelle Cousins. Michelle actually, as part of our eID group, 3 weeks ago, I think it was Michelle, she came down and spoke, and she's helped me out with setting up some pregnancy data on our wand. We've been scanning for a long time and have used historical data to help when it comes to classing our ewes. But it's always a bit of a dog's breakfast, a bit of a circus when it comes to, you've got all this information on your sheet, you've got, and then you're trying to look through, you've got sheets, clipboard flying everywhere, you're trying to class your ewes. With this information, that it's just so much easier. So this is the stick reader. So we've gone ahead and put our historical scanning data for the up until 5 years actually. So you'll see here, this is the reader. So this is the eID number, the VID number or the visual number, and then it gives you what's happened in pregnancy for the scanning for 25, 24, 23, 22. And then you go onto the second page. 21, it was a 20 drop, so it's not in the mob yet. And then also gives you information about whether it was born, a single or twin. So much easier. I've actually just been set up, and so it's something that's going to be really easy to do and help assist me when it comes to, particularly with classing, as we go forward with having that historical information. Like here, you can easily see that, well, in my case, if we haven't had a twin by probably 3 years, they're out. There's no point in holding them because I know that they should definitely be having twins or scanning in twins sooner than 3 years. Okay, just finally, some of my sort of pretty simple learnings that I've in terms of using ID since I've started. I've had, as I've said, I had good historical data that I've just put up on an Excel sheet in terms of preg scanning, but that hasn't been linked to your eID bucket files. It hasn't, some of the weight data hasn't been, it's been in different formats. So it's been a bit of a dog's breakfast. So got to get better in that. Tag numbering system. I haven't been smart in 1 year where some of the numbers were similar to other years, and so when it comes to weighing, I couldn't even go ahead and use the correct number because that wasn't going through, and because it had already been used in a previous year. So simple dumb mistakes like that. And Michelle might even talk about some of the visual ID, how she sets that up when she talks. And as you can see, I was sort of pretty slow and steady in terms of how I started with my journey, and it's worked out okay in terms of just putting the tags in the lambs each year. But I think I can certainly see value in putting it in the whole mob because you're not halfway in between. Then you can really utilise the across your ewe mob by having all those tags in the whole mob to get good data and a good bank of data for the whole mob rather than just half the mob, which I had up until this year. And I guess finally, if you have an opportunity, I'm not sure, Jody, whether the other groups have started, but yeah, great opportunity. We've had a good experience in terms of big with Deb's Camel. That was last year, and then this year that group is basically continuing being involved with a group of like-minded producers who want to learn about eID and how to apply it. So yeah, thanks very much.
Brett, thank you for sharing your experiences with the implementation of eID. Case studies are made possible by funding from Australian Wool Innovation, the South Australian Sheep Industry Fund, and the Department of Primary Industries and Regions.